Hi everyone, thanks for joining us at the MetaPrep channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about practical use of technology to create online mentoring or an online classroom. And my name is Mathew Crawford, and I'm the head of MetaPrep. And today joining me is my good friend, Linda Maepa. And Linda is, she's a lot of things. I met her when we were both living in San Diego, and she worked at UCSD as a lab manager, but she's been an engineer, an educator, and all kinds of things. She works with her own child and other students now with educational programs, and she and I have used some similar tools. And today we're going to talk about the tools that we use and help people, help anybody who wants to learn how to use them in a practical and valuable way. And so I guess we should start off, we should jump into what we're using right now to create this video and communicate between each other. Let's talk about Zoom, which Zoom is a platform, and it's kind of replaced Skype in a lot of people's toolkits for running meetings. But more recently, I think more and more people are also using it as an online classroom due to some of its functionalities. And Linda knows these a little bit better than I do. I use Zoom with a number of students, and I've used it to run classrooms. It has a whiteboard, but I'll point out later, I use a different sort of whiteboard functionality, but it's useful. But let's talk about Zoom. Linda, I'm going to let you take over this discussion because you've used this better than I have.
Well, I just had some more time in, all right. And because I work with kids K through 16 very broadly. And in this particular time, especially since the pandemic pause has started, I've been working with K through 12 students. And I got to tell you, actually pre-K through 12 students. And I got to tell you, keeping them interested, my own child is completely uninterested in being on Zoom. And that caused me to think a lot about why. Why is that? What helps me keep the kids engaged? And how can I use this tool? Because this is what we've got right now, any kind of online video and interactive type tools such as Zoom or Google Meet, or I know Microsoft also has their own product. What is it that we can do to make this a sustainable tool? So I've done a lot of work in that area. You know, there's everything from the very practical piece around security so that you don't have people coming in and disrupting your course.
I got Zoom bombed once.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Have you been in one that was bombed?
No, I have not. I do always look at what is happening, like in the meeting. I always look to see if there's a password. I look to see if which is a good something good to have.
I was running a meeting without a password, a math club, and I advertised it on Twitter.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a free to come.
The other thing I looked to see.
That was my Zoom bomb moment. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I looked to.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. You know, we learn how to use the tools better, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's really important if you're going to publicly post, because that's the other thing I look to see how publicly posted is this. And then when I connect, I look to see if there's a waiting list, right? If there's a wait list being employed, then you have a lot of control over who's accessing your program. And if you have to kick somebody out, because it is possible to kick people out, having a wait list means they can't get back in, right? There are a number of other security areas that one should be thoughtful of. For instance,
I'm going to share my screen for just a moment to show this wait list that you're talking about. You know, up here before, you know, I had the wait list enabled for this conversation.
Oh yeah.
And so you were logged on with both your laptop and your phone. You're on with just one right now. But I did have to let you in above the participants list. You know, I clicked down. There was a button down here. Well, it was participants, and you see that when you're logged on ordinarily. But I didn't get it in this screenshot right here. But yeah, I had you up here, and then I had to punch a button to let you in, and that keeps
Yeah.
strangers from walking into your conversation, meeting, or classroom.
That's right. You can admit people individually, or often there'll be an option to admit all, especially like I like to leave an opportunity for people to join before I get connected, but when they connect, they get put in the wait list. So when I do join, then I can admit all, right? So real quickly, don't post publicly. If you do, post with a password and use a waiting list. And then at the very top of that actually is Zoom. When you create a Zoom account, they give you a personal meeting ID. Don't use that. Especially don't publish it publicly. Because what that means is that anybody can go into that space and access it at any time because it's always available. Instead, what you can do is you can either create a new meeting when you have a meeting and have it generate a new meeting ID for you, or you can schedule a meeting and have it, again, generate a new meeting ID for you. And I like to use my own passwords. You can modify those passwords for yourselves to make them meaningful to your audience as well. And so that's some on Zoom security. I mean, there's a lot more, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I run MetaPrep. We run a math club for adults that you've participated in a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, my password is 112358, which are the first 6 Fibonacci numbers. So anybody who's probably going to remember that, and I don't mind saying it here because nobody who's going to run a Zoom bomb is going to watch this video. So.
And even if they do, you've got a wait list.
Yeah, and hopefully they learn some math.
Yeah, exactly. I invited somebody for tonight's, by the way. Hopefully.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm excited about tonight's. It's my favorite topic, game theory. So hopefully we'll get a crowd.
So what's next? So one of the things I helped you with was entry and exit chimes.
Yeah.
So, once you're getting really involved in whatever it is that you're working with in Zoom, sometimes if you have a waiting list, you can strand people there. And trust me, I have done it. But then fiddling around, I noticed in my Manage Participants menu, that the same one that can pop up when you're looking at establishing a wait list, for instance, that if you don't have one already, in that area is to play exit and entry chimes. I click that on so that there's a chime when somebody shows up into the waiting list, and I can just briefly step aside from what I'm teaching and admit that new person.
Yeah, and I think that those entry exit chimes are there. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and the wait list is also there.
Yeah, and this was really helpful. When you pointed that out to me, that was really helpful for me, because I'll go ahead and tell you, you can't see this, with my camera. I'm not one of those people who uses a little camera hole at the top of a laptop. I have, I've got a desktop, but I've got 3 screens to my left. I've got a big Cintiq Wacom monitor, and I'll talk about that more later. But then I've got 2 more regular screens to my right, and this is the one I'm working on primarily. I keep some things here, and then I keep some things on the far right, and I can pull them as I need them. But a lot of times I take the Zoom, some of that stuff, and I push it too far to the right, or I have like 6 things up, right? As I'm keeping all the resources that I'm using, and it gets buried underneath something. And so the chimes actually, it immediately increased my functionality for running the math club, because people come in over a stretch of about 10 minutes mostly at the beginning. And so I need to constantly, not constantly, but a few times I need to go and admit somebody to get them in and let them join the discussion. So that's been a big help.
Yeah, no, there's a flow there, and yeah, those chimes are just, it's like, okay, now I can pay attention to the conversation that we're having, and every time I have a chime, it's Pavlovian, just go and admit the person, if I know who they are. I'm not shy about interrogating. I ran a book club a few weeks ago, and somebody came in. I had no idea, the name didn't match anybody, and so
Interesting.
I went in and I immediately asked, "Who are you?" I mean, I was polite. I
Yeah,
was like,
sure.
"Who's this?" I was ready to go.
Why are you creeping?
Yeah, exactly. They weren't creeping. It was just our friend.
Good, good, good.
Yeah, it was her husband's. It was our husband's Zoom login. So let's see, what have I got for you guys? Okay, I want to talk about something very exciting to me. So please feel free to cut me off if I go too long.
Go ahead.
I'm going to call it screen sharing theory. So screen sharing, I'm sure people have seen the articles about how Zoom is exhausting, or people don't like to look at their faces, or in other ways, basically talking about the enormous cognitive load that video conferencing represents. Because we're not here in our corporate headquarters with a giant screen the size of the wall talking with our colleagues here. What we're doing is we're on a phone, or we're on a laptop or a tablet looking at people.
Right.
And it's very difficult to really get a sense of body language, or even the micro expressions that you can see on people's faces. I think, a little bit exaggerating because I know of this issue, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like stage acting
That's
versus
right.
acting on camera. You make
I
all
didn't
your
think about
emotions
that.
a little bit. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and say I try to cut this off as much as possible personally. I like to do most of my Zoom anything on desktop setup, right? So
Yeah.
I have 25 square feet of desk, all around me here. This is my workspace, and like I said, I've got the 3 screens. I might even go to 5 screens at some point. Stack 2 and 2, and then have the Cintiq on the left. And so for me, I can make everybody a little bit bigger when I need to, and that helps me out. So like I'm a fan of just sidestepping problems when you can, but of course sometimes you can't. So what are your solutions?
So for me, I said bye-bye, people. I made little tiny heads by screen sharing, right? One of the things I really love, because we have a weekly family Zoom, is I use the gallery view, which allows you to see not just the speaker, but everybody who's connected. I think up to 6 or 9 people. And that's really great for a hot minute. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to screen share. If my family sees me looking off to the side, it's because the visual input is just a high cognitive load. And so what I want to do is like kind of be on a party line, like I'm on a phone. I want to hear everybody's intonation. It's kind of like being actually at a party. You're not looking at everybody's body language. You're hearing and you're feeling the ambiance of the environment. And so I do that using screen sharing, and there are a number of different tools. And Matthew and I will talk about, Matthew's is more technology focused. Mine is technology focused too, but it's a lot of software. So Zoom comes with a screen sharing button, and you can screen share, and it will minimize the size of people's heads. And so it'll show up, usually for me, it's on the right-hand side of the screen. This is a book the kids and I were doing several weeks ago. And this is really helpful because I can see every child's name, and I can call on them, and I can hear them, I can hear their voices, but I'm not as concerned about what their faces and their bodies are doing. I'm more concerned with what they sound like, if I haven't heard from them.
And I'll say this. So, I'm somebody, I like having a classroom, right? I literally built my own schools and operated them for 9 years. so that I can have my own classroom design and I can make it into a community. I had I had whiteboards around nearly 360 degrees of the walls when I built my last classroom. Right,
Yep, I remember.
bought 4x8 melamine boards, I think a 1/4 inch thick from Home Depot. Had 2,240 square feet of this stuff just delivered by truck, and we put it all over several rooms and hallways too. So being in a classroom, if I have 12 students working in an 800 square foot classroom, that's a lot of space. They can move around, be working at each in their own place. They can group in 2s or 3s to work on something, but I can also look around the room, see everything, and I'm there with them. I see all of their reactions, and I respond to all those reactions. Going online is different. You take away a lot of that communication that is automatic communication that you've set up with your classroom process, and you've got to find ways to replace it. And so I think, the moment you said, when I screen share, I minimize, now I'm not paying as much, I'm not looking at their faces. I think, there are times, when you don't need to be looking for their reactions. And then there are times when you want to be. And so, I think it just, after you use this tool a bit, you can become better at, changing the modes as you go.
Yes.
You can go from screen share, you can go to face, when you need to. And it's not perfect. It's not as good as being in a really, well cultivated space, in person, but you can do pretty well. So.
Yeah, no, I thank you for bringing that up, because I'm going to stop sharing briefly, because this is the natural point for me actually to do that, right? Because I wanted to check in with you, because that's what I do. That is exactly what I do in the classroom. Classroom. So I'm a homeschooler, y'all. So the kids I'm talking about, these are homeschool kids that I'm working with. They don't have to be there. They choose to be there. And that's what makes it super exciting too, because I think that there are some lessons here for creating an engaging classroom experience that is very broad, that is not just homeschool related. And I do exactly as you say. I minimize the screen, but it's like there's a clock in my head that says I need to check in with the kids and I need to see, what's going on. It was so funny because yesterday I had a group of kids, and one kid, I went a little long. I went past when I knew I should check, and guess what happened? There's a mouth. I've seen inside I'm seeing some kids' tonsils. Some kids' tonsils. I was like, all right, don't ignore that next time. And it's not that it's, and I didn't care. I just want to make sure he's engaged. But clearly, as you can say, I lost a kid. It's like, okay, it's like, let's go to the next thing we're going to do now.
And there's some of that you have to let them also work through, right?
That's right. But you may be surprised to learn that's the first time, and that was week 6 with these kids. Okay. That was the first time.
Nice.
I had anything like that happen. And I'm not pretending that my ignoring, when I knew I needed to check in. And I think, how I engage with them is different when I'm looking at them versus when I'm listening, right, to them. And I think they detect that.
Yeah. And if there is a drawback for these kinds of online tools, it's that you have a little bit of sensory deprivation. And so you have to be deliberate in the way that you connect to your ordinary senses for those things. It sounds like you've been adjusting to that. I think I haven't quite had enough time to fully adjust to it, but I've mostly worked with people one-on-one, so I haven't needed to quite so much, fortunately for me. But that's the game. Is you've got to experience these tools. You've got to learn how to use them.
Yes,
it's putting in a few hours.
And I should say, so my teaching is highly hands-on and experiential. And I'm at a park with kids, and we're in the ground you know, driving chopsticks into the ground, wrapping string around them, doing math art. We are in the field looking at a natural tar seep in the middle of Central California. We're climbing trees and looking at mushrooms, you know, at Point Reyes National Park? The Point Reyes National Park. You know, it's very hands-on sensory stuff. And I'm spending a lot of time with my co-teacher watching these kids, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. So I'm talking about doing very experiential learning online. It is possible. It just takes a bit of experimentation and a willingness of the students to show up to help co-create the new learning environment and the new learning instincts that make your classroom tick over. So I'm going to share again because there's some really interesting things with when you share a screen in Zoom. And I want to talk about annotations, and I'm going to actually, let's see. So what I can do here is I can show the kids certain things. Like I have this little tool that comes with this learning program, this reading program. I can like have this little stamp, but the kids can have things too. I've got another, I think I took a screenshot of this. And it's up perhaps. Yeah, there we go. So at the
you
top,
and they, or you and I, we can both be drawing at the same time.
yeah, we can be drawing at the same time. I mean, I don't want the kids drawing on the book. I tried to teach them yesterday how to do annotations and I completely failed. So I'm going to find a link because I have to find one for them to help them figure out. Usually there's a pencil, a symbol of a pencil that lets you know that you can do annotations. But something that I think is really helpful for me, and I'm looking forward to incorporating it into my reading class especially, is right here is show names of annotators, okay? You can disable annotation, you know, if you've got kids.
Show that once and let's you and I draw something. Let's see that in action.
Yeah, and we can just use this screen. Or do you want to use something of your own? Do you want to share?
No, that's fine. Go ahead and we'll use the screen.
Yeah.
We'll just do this real quick.
Yeah, so to annotate, find the little pencil.
That's me drawing red waves.
And the thing I love best in annotation is this spotlight. And I only can get the spotlight when I am on a desktop. I cannot get the spotlight when I am on my Android machine. Huh. Android phone. I can only get an arrow.
So where's the name? Like, I don't see my name yet. Do we have that?
Oh, I don't think I have that on. Hold on. Annotate. Oops, annotate. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. So that is under more. Here I am trying to show you guys. Now I'm going to show names of annotators. I click that on. Spotlight.
Okay, so it didn't do my first three wavy lines, but it does pop up when I make something new now.
Yeah.
And I can make an arrow that way, or there's an arrow feature that makes a nicer arrow.
That's the spotlight arrow, yeah.
Spotlight arrow, I see. Yeah. It's gonna go away, but I can say, hey, you know, what color are his eyes or her eyes? That's
right, that's right. How many, like in the book we were reading the other day, how many legs does this octopus have? Right? So yeah, so this is really useful and it helps you. That's another way for you to keep track of student engagement and to know, you know, what's going on when you have, for this, I'm actually going to be bringing some worksheets in to work on, to work on some early reading skills. And so I want to be able to know when the kids are understanding the sounds I'm making versus, thank you, versus not understanding. And then let's see. The other thing I have noticed is that the other thing I do besides using the whiteboard to minimize screen is to share like a static image or a video. But I noticed videos can be kind of herky-jerky and they are not very smooth. So what I'm going to be experimenting with is having a video that's on my machine instead of pulling something from YouTube, so that I can display it in class. Now, one of the cool things you can do if you're in the K through 12 space, by the way, is use PBS Learning Media. PBS Learning Media has a lot of their licensed content there available for download for instructors. And so that's one way I'm going to be getting like Between the Lions clips and things like that. Although, yeah, some Between the Lions I can download, others I can't. And then let's see. Oh, and 2 cameras. So I mentioned that I do some field science classes, and I'm bringing science now online. And so one of the first things we did was a crystal making chemistry. It's actually chemistry, math, and physics lab. And what we did was have 2 cameras. You can connect to the same Zoom using your same login credentials, even if you wanted to, and use multiple devices. So I have my laptop and my phone, as you saw, both connected to this Zoom. There's other folks who actually have an external webcam that they can share, and you can share that. If you go into your share screen, there's advanced options where you can share content from second camera. That would be your webcam that's connected via USB, for instance.
And I'll go ahead and tell you, I already love this idea. And like I told you, I've got 25 square feet of desk space in my operating desk here. And I already want to get like a tripod with a camera and be able to like write on my own paper, because it's one thing.
Yes.
I do have a very good screen, but I sometimes want students to see, hey, I'm working on a problem. How is it that I'm even drawing step by step or something like that?
That's right.
That
matters.
Yeah, it matters, right? Exactly. And there's some things that I may want to be able to display that way, though. As I'll show later, I get almost all of what I need from the other tools that we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Here's my phone on a tripod.
Nice.
And that's exactly, when we do chemistry lab, I have this tripod at its shortest height, and then I have the camera tilted way over, and I just make sure before we start inviting students in that we have a great view for all the component mixing, the heating, etc. That's going to happen. And I keep the audio on this device, right? The audio's on this device. On my laptop, it's turned off. My audio and video is turned off.
I noticed you doing that earlier. You had one muted, the other one
That's
on.
right. Otherwise, you're going to get the worst feedback imaginable, bouncing between your 2 devices. So you disconnect audio on your monitoring device. You mute your speakers on that second monitoring device. And as regards team teaching, and which is its own topic, I won't go too far into it, but it's really helpful. So what I do is I sit on this laptop when we're doing those kinds of labs, and I'm watching the students. I'm watching the students to see how engaged they are, if they might need further explanations for something that was just said. And then I interject with my co-teacher, my husband. I interject with my co-teacher and say, hey, what about XYZ? Right? It's like, could you explain blah, blah, blah? Because we do multi-age in the homeschool world. The only barrier is interest. And so we invite any child or adult to come and participate. So I think in our first and second chemistry labs, because we've run this a couple times, we had I think kids as young as 6 and 7. Our 7-year-old was participating. This is one of his favorite things to do, is making crystals. And all the way up to, I think, like 15, 16-year-old. So you just have to be able to teach, to different levels. And so it's great to be able to monitor and see where you might be losing folks, and respond even to chat messages and the like.
Very
And I
nice.
think that's for me in Zoom.
Okay, well, we're going to discuss now some tools that I use along with Zoom, and these can be used either for classroom or one-on-one. I do mostly one-on-one teaching, one-on-one math coaching with students. And I'm now gonna screen share and show first. So you see this Ptolemy's inequality and theorem. You see that, Linda?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we're sharing my primary screen right now, and this is a lesson. This is a document that I've written up, that's several pages that I've used for years to teach something called Ptolemy's inequality. And this is it's a little bit beyond what would be like an advanced geometry classroom. So I have my own documents, this PDF document, and this right here is not just an ordinary PDF viewer. This is something called PDF Annotator, and I discovered it because my wife is a scientist. She's a biochemist, and working through her university, she knows the tools that are used to read papers and to make your own annotations. That's where she had it, and she was using it. And she said, "Hey, you might like this too." And it turned out I use it 10 times as much as she does now.
Wow.
But yeah, that's what it was originally for, is just to be able to make your own notes and anything that you're reading, especially papers. But now I can take something like this and I can just write all over it. And I'll show how nicely this works out. I can, first of all, I can just, very cleanly write any equations anywhere. I can, point to things, make, highlight things, make notes, triangle inequality. I can say, hey, that's a tool from which we develop Ptolemy's inequality, and then we can walk through the steps of how. And then I can save it. Once I'm done, I can save it later as a PDF. And this is really nice. Or I can even start with my own PDF. And here's another tool. I use Microsoft Snip and Sketch. And I assume that there is probably, I don't know where it is, but I assume there's an analogous version for the Apple users and any other computer setup. But I can take anything, I can copy it. I do this with web pages all the time, or I copied you and I earlier, and then I can take that and go to a fresh screen and just paste this down. And now I can resize it. I do this with my work too. I might, have an equation where we've gone through like 6 steps of, manipulating something. We're trying to derive some formula, maybe, and then I can take a result. And if I need to, I can bring it to a new page and work on it from there, because sometimes your pages of math get crowded. And wow, how much better is that than just, your average chalkboard? And it's something that I can't even do, as much as I love my classroom with, hundreds of square feet of whiteboard all around. That's something I can't even do in an ordinary classroom. So, with a little practice with tools like this, you just get all kinds of great, new functionality, and then you can save all the PDFs at the end. Anytime I work with a student, I take any work that we have done, and then I save the PDF to a Dropbox folder, whatever cloud folder you want to use to share. But I can save everything that we've done through the whole session, so they can go back. But yeah, I've grown to depend on a PDF annotator. I'll mention this. I don't know how much it costs if you're not associated with an educational institution, right? So, you and I may be able to get this at a lower price, but a lot of people doing, educational stuff are going to be able to get this. I think the educator's price might be like $20 or $15, for a year license or something like that. And so that's not at all, outrageous.
Higher.
Yeah, I think that, like a lot of software, they wind up with I think that they get more of their money from higher price tag, probably corporate users or something like that. Who knows? Anyway, wasn't that bad for me. All these tools, grand total that I used did not cost much. The biggest tool for me that is a cost is my actual monitor, the one that I write on. And I'm going to talk about that now. So when I said I have a multiple monitor setup, one of these is a Wacom, but this is not just your simple Wacom bamboo tablet. This is called a Cintiq, and I'll write that. I'll spell that for anybody who wants to, look it up and learn more about it, because it is not a word that you're going to see very often. The Cintiq is what professional artists often use. In fact, my wife and I, a few years ago, we had this outrageously unique opportunity to go and tour the studios at Futurama, where Matt Groening makes a show, and we met Matt Groening, we met all the voice actors and the writers, and then we went to Rough Draft Studios. And at Rough Draft Studios, one of the things that struck me immediately is we walk in and we see all these artists working on the show is about 80% of them, maybe 85% of them were using this Cintiq, this specific one that I had just bought. So mine is, I think, almost a decade old, almost 10 years old now. And they have updated versions, and the DPI on these things is just getting just outrageous. The artists, they can like zoom in on like multiple times to a tiny detail level and just work and just get amazing levels of their art down. And so that's what I have. Is I have what was an artist tool, but I wanted to make sure that I bought pretty top of the line so that I could use it. I've used it now for 10 years and it's been wonderful. And it has, I can't even tell you the number of buttons. I don't even use many of them, but I have 8 rectangular buttons on each side and a circle on each side that can go through different functions, and I can program those buttons in all kinds of different ways. So it's kind of like setting up your own macro tools, and anybody who's ever done anything with a complicated software where you can have your own hotkeys and you develop your own style of using it over time, you can really just stack those things in to make your functionality boom, boom, boom. And the opportunity to do that is just immense. I'm sure other people use it better than I do, but you get what you need out of it if you work with it. So I have that Cintiq, and my wife she was a little bit jealous, but she didn't want to spend what I did, which was like $2,500 for this top level premium tool. But of course, there are all kinds of writable tablets at this point. The technology is just, it's gotten better and better, and I just want to pull up one company. For the company that my wife bought hers from is Huon, and you can see they make all kinds of tablets at all kinds of price points. Hers cost, I think, $300. And this was, I don't know, 4 months ago, or maybe it was around Christmas. I can't remember for sure. But there are all kinds of price points on these things at this point. And of course, Microsoft made their Surface line. They have like a desktop that is it's like a computer built into a monitor, and the thing moves around real nicely. But I do want to point this out. You should study as much as getting your monitor or whatever, however high quality you want to get it, whatever you're going to spend, anywhere from I guess like $20 to $2,500. A lot of the functionality is going to come down to how it is you have it mounted. And I'll go ahead and say this: my least favorite thing about Cintiq, I'll say wonderful things. I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10 type review, right? But the one thing that I really didn't like about it was the stand that it came on. And I'm sure it's fine for a lot of people the way you use it. It feels more like an artist's easel. It's not that it moves that poorly or anything, but it, for me as a teacher, or wanting to just like move it in and out of my view, like the stand just didn't do that. But somebody made an arm, and I wish I had this pulled up right now on Amazon. Somebody made an arm that you could buy if you search, Cintiq arm on Amazon. You'll find it. And I bought one, and mounted this to my desk. It wasn't hard, and suddenly I just had boom, instantly better functionality. To a point like it feels almost seamless. If you go into the Microsoft store and you play with their screens, have you used any of those? The new, they've been out for a couple of years now. What's that?
The Surfaces.
The Surfaces.
Yeah, I have not. Not.
They move pretty nicely. Like it feels like the moment you feel, and you're just like, oh, The technophiles out there, I'm sure, love them to a degree. What I don't like about those computers is they're not moddable, you know. I like to
Mm-hmm.
get a new egg and get my pieces when I want to upgrade, not have to replace the whole thing, right? So I think,
Yeah.
you know, and that's one of the things that Microsoft I've historically liked about Microsoft, right? Um,
So really quickly, because I've wanted something like the Cintiq. I've wanted a graphical tablet for a long time. Not that I'm an artist, but I do a lot of design visual work on my iPad, my Generation 2 iPad. And, you know, in terms of like an iPad Pro or graphical tablet, I mean, do you use any other kinds of tablets? And do you have any way of comparing the Cintiq to?
I did buy one of the Surfaces. That,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's sort of a tablet computer and a laptop. You know, you have the keyboard part that you can plug it into, so you can use it as either one, and it's nice. I like it. There are probably
Yeah.
people who like it more than I do because their work tends toward it more. They're like, I'll sometimes put it down for weeks at a time just because I don't need it much. I bought it actually to trade. You know, aside from education, you know, I trade financial instruments, and I bought it so that I could literally be like, we went on a road trip when something very big was going on, and there was a lot of money involved, and I just sat, you know, tethered it to my phone and traded several $1 million worth of cryptocurrency
Yep.
as needed, and I could do that, you know, in a car while driving, and that was primarily what it meant to me. Other people, I'm sure, use them, you know, more consistently. Sometimes I'll use mine, you know, every day for a month, and then I'll put it down for 6 weeks and not touch it.
Yep.
I'm probably not the best person to ask about it, to be honest.
That's okay.
My desktop setup is just so cultivated to
Yep.
my functionality, and that's really what it's about, right? Finding all these tools and you know, matching
Yes.
what you need. If you spend time on your setup, you know, including the way you mount your monitors or your tripod setup right there, you know, focus on those things, and you'll have what you need. But yeah, these are, let's see, are there any more of these tools that I use that add to all this? I think that was my list of tools. The PDF annotator, my Wacom screen, whatever screen you need, possibly another, you know, tripod like you've got there, snip and sketch, you know, just the ability to take what you're doing and then move it around. And, you know, I like all this better than I like the annotation. You know, the screen sharing is good, but
Mm.
you know, the whiteboard functionality is limited. When you shared your screen with me, I'll go ahead and mention this. It came up on my middle monitor, and you know, I suppose I could change that setting,
Oh.
but it didn't
Yeah,
come up
yeah.
on my writable screen, and therefore I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't take my nib and draw nicely. And you know, if I were to, you know, start, um, you know, building some kind of equation, you know, I could not do that with my mouse in any way
You're right.
that is quick or feasible, or you know, there's just no way. So
Yeah.
you know, with this, I can mold to whatever I need. You know, the flexibility, the ability to just use it as you would use a chalkboard. To me, that's a big deal. So I don't
Yeah.
like, you know, the Zoom annotation. It's fine. It's good for many things. But if what you need is, like I do, the ability to just write all over simply, then I would suggest, you know, having your own form of whiteboard, and that's why I like PDF Annotator so much. So
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, you saw when we were setting up, I had my phone in here because I was going to demonstrate some of the things that I've done with it with the kids in terms of using my finger on the phone to write, right? You could use a stylus or what have you. But there was a problem. For some reason, it was not displaying very well. It was laggy. I couldn't get some of my finger pressure to actually translate into drawing on the screen. I was like, you know what? We're going to skip that. And that's a problem you're not going to have with a dedicated device, because
right,
one thing that does, and it does it well.
yeah,
And yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the urge to have to have a graphical tablet was precisely because, one, I was trying to write to demonstrate, because I haven't even introduced the writing pieces with the kids yet. I mean, in a very limited way. But I wanted to do that. But also with some of the visual mathematics stuff I was doing, I need to be able to draw. So you can't, with Zoom annotation, or with Zoom drawing and annotation tools, you can make maybe a very few polygons, and that's pretty much it. And it's like, oh no, I need to do so much more than that, right? So there are definitely limitations. It gives you flexibility to have some hardware behind what you're doing. This is so cool. And thank you for Snip and Sketch, because that's going on as soon as we're done with this Zoom.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd used it for, just a few things before I realized, one day, hey, I can use this with my teaching. And now it's like literally I probably use it once every 10 minutes, constantly moving stuff around with it now. So it's been good. Well, Linda, let's go ahead and wrap things. Have we covered everything we needed to?
I think so.
Oh,
I think
great.
so.
People let us know if not. Yeah, thanks so much for doing this with me. I hope that some people watch this and they get some ideas out of it that help them. I know that everybody's experimenting with education right now, and hopefully this will help some people.
Yep.
And if you like this video, please subscribe to the MetaPrep channel.